In Photoshop, blending modes are useful to mix the current layer with the ones below it. Now, as you can see, for example, in this image, we have a photo of snow falling down and is a black and white image. And if you want to correctly mix with the background, you need to change this blending mode from normal, which is the default one, to screen mode. And as you can see, black disappear and you get your snow falling down inside the house. Now, how can we understand which one you need to use? Let's see them and understand a little bit better how they work. Before starting, let's put a couple of names to understand this lesson better. The top layer, which is the one where we apply a blending mode, is called the blend layer. The one below is the base layer. So let's open the drop-down menu. As we can see, blending modes are divided into categories. So let's understand the difference and when to use them, or at least the most useful. And by the way, I need to say something before we start. There are many ways to explain blending modes, and since it's all a matter of math and values, it usually ends up pretty technical, dull, and unclear. So I will try to make it easier to understand, simplifying concepts and showing examples. I repeat, I will show you only the ones I usually work with. So the categories are normal, darken, lighten, contrast, comparative, and component. The first one is the normal category because you can see a new result only if you lower the blend layer opacity. We can use the normal blend mode to add reflections on areas without any. One example could be when we render glasses on a separate pass and we need to compose them on the base render. In this way, we can pick their transparency manually without re-rendering. The solve uses noise to mix blend and base layer. I never used the solve once in my entire life. The next category darkens the final result. Darken mode picks the darkest pixel between the blend layer and each channel of the base layer. That means that if we have a black and white image, the three channels are the same and darken shows the darkest pixel. So you can see from this example, the mid-gray disk disappears at 49% gray when we pull it over a gradient. When we have a colored blend layer, you will get a different result depending on the color mix. Darken is useful when you have a bright areas to fill with the darker value and you don't want to spend time masking. If you're using colors and darken doesn't work the way you expect, try darker color. Multiply, as the name suggests, multiply the luminosity. It could be straightforward to understand if you think about values in terms of luminosity. For example, black is 0% luminosity, so everything multiplied by 0 becomes 0. White is 100% luminosity, so anything multiplied by 100% stays the same. And the same way, mid-gray is 50% luminosity, so if we have a mid-gray layer on multiply, it will cut in half the image brightness. Multiply is the perfect blend mode to paint shadows, and it's also used to recreate a shader from scratch, multiplying together a diffuse pass to a lighting pass. Color burn and linear burn effects produce a strong contrast and dark result if kept at 100%. I sometimes use them with orange or blue tones on a low opacity layer if I need to modify the light temperature. I prefer linear burn over color burn because its contrast is less realistic. The next category usually brightens the result. Lighten is darken opposite. Photoshop reveals the brightest pixel between the two layers. I often use it with clouds when I need to compose them together and I need to remove one of the two skies quickly. Another reason to use lighten is to replace a darker color in the base layer with a brighter one. If it doesn't work in the way you need, try lighter color instead. Screen, one of the most used blend modes, multiplies the inverse of the luminosity. Once again, it's not clear what that means, so here we go with an explanation. If you have a 50% gray layer on top, it will increase the actual brightness by 50%. If you have a 25% gray, which is a darker gray, it will increase the actual brightness by 55%. Black does not increase the brightness, and white, well, you can imagine. Screen is mainly used to create fog, smoke, God rays, car light trails, but avoid it to make stuff brighter. Color dodge is a mind blower. Have you ever want to paint light on object in a realistic way? Well, color dodge is the blend mode for you. It's similar to screen, but it burns the result, especially on the borders. We will see how to use it in the following videos. Linear dodge add is similar to screen mode, but I use it only on 32-bit files to compose light mix passes from the Corona renderer. As seen in the previous video, you can use it also to check if some masks are missing. The next category contrasts the result and usually makes mid-gray disappear. Overlay uses the dark areas of the top layer to darken the result and the bright spots to brighten the result. It's like having multiply and screen together. Also, the result is more saturated if you have colors. So you can use overlay for many reasons, like adding details, sharpening your image, contrasting the image, or even adding colors on something black and white. If overlay is too strong, you can use soft light, which is exactly like overlay, but 50% less intense. Hard light, vivid light, and linear light, together with hard mix, are rarely used because they work with the same principles of overlay but burning the result. Pin light works it best with colors. I usually give it a chance when it's about to paint reflection of people on the floor. The next category applies math operation between layers. The only one I use is difference. The top layer color will become black if the same color is present on the bottom layer. With difference, we can correct an image white balance or check if someone stole your artwork. If you compare two images with difference and the result is entirely black, well, those are the same image. The next category is about hue, saturation, and luminosity. Hue and color are similar. Hue keeps the color of the top layer, but the luminosity and the saturation of the bottom one. Color keeps the color and the saturation of the top layer, taking only the brightness of the bottom layer. They are both useful when you need to change color to something, with the difference that color lets you also pick the saturation. Saturation keeps saturation of the top layer. However, I don't find myself using it. Luminosity keeps the brightness of the top layer. It's pretty useful when you want to erase lights and shadows from a texture to flatten it, or when you are using adjustments like curves. Unfortunately, when you contrast using curves, the image also gets more saturated if you forget to change the blending mode to luminosity.